I thought it would be nice to have a chat with playwright Joel Tan, who is a playwright I admire a lot and is a great friend. So you'll see this watermark in the background, this murky figure. That's him, and he's going to enter now. Hey, Joel.
Hey.
Yes. Yeah.
Cheers.
What are we drinking there?
I'm drinking lychee and fruit beer.
We may as well plug this, like this one.
Blurred out. Okay.
Yeah. You've already drunk.
So, Our friend Kishan surprised us with a delivery of these bottled cocktails, and they're very, very tasty.
Which was your favorite?
Yeah. I think the old fashioned was very good.
Yeah.
The espresso martini was strong. I had all three cocktails in the same day though. So.
Of course, as is intended. So cheers. So Joel, we've talked about this quite a bit, right? Obviously, let's start with like the whole lockdown thing, and what does it mean for theatre? Obviously, for a lot of people like yourself, work is affected, like basics. Your whole core purpose just suddenly comes to a halt. But I think beyond that, what else is there? Like, what else is going on in your mind at this time? Like, because I'm guessing as a writer, you live very much on immersing yourself in the world and observing people and tuning into conversations. And suddenly, when you're in lockdown, what happens? What happens to all that?
That's the big question, though, isn't it, Sean? Like, I mean, when this all first happened, I think it shocked me and a lot of the other writers I've been talking to into a kind of paralysis. Not so much because of like how suddenly everybody's work disappeared, right? It's not just our work, mind you. It's like the work of practically everybody in virtually every field. But it shocked us all into a sudden paralysis. Like one of the things that a lot of my writer friends have been saying is they feel unable even to write. The last thing they want to do is be creative or productive at this time. Even like engaging with parts of the brain associated with writing, like reading, is difficult. There was like so many artists I know working in different fields just can't even bring themselves to interact with art. In as much as so much free stuff has now been released, right? It's like I was just having a chat with a director friend of mine who was just like, I can't even bring myself to watch any of it. Like, last time I watched theatre. In my mind, though, I think what it has is, I think I've had this thought for a very long time, right? Which is like how complicit or how bound up in all these problematic structures and ideologies and comforts are the arts, right? So one of the things that's come up a lot is how this virus, this pandemic, kind of exposed a lot of the cracks in the way our societies are run, the way the injustices, the imbalances, the toxicities, and I think for a lot of artists and theatre artists specifically, I think maybe it's shocked us into realizing, how involved in all that were we, right? Like how actually essential is the work we do, that we tell ourselves is so essential and so important and vital, but it's gone overnight. Nobody needs it. What does that tell you about your work, right? What does it tell you about the things you've been led to believe about how essential all of this work is?
Yes, exactly.
And I think a lot of artists have been put on the back foot or the defensive posture, right? So you see a lot of these memes going around like, oh, when in lockdown you were looking for entertainment, don't forget that it was artists who gave you that entertainment. So it's like, why put yourself in that kind of defensive position? So, and then on the corollary to that, I've also found is that a lot of people have wanted to be even more productive during this time, right? To kind of like utilize this moment to be even more productive, to churn, to say, no, this is not the end of it. And I think part of that comes from a defensive instinct, because intuitively we've all felt that there's something kind of fundamentally unimportant or unvital about what we do, and we've had to convince ourselves collectively as practitioners that there is value to it. And of course there is, but I think now is the time when we're beginning to figure out what it is about what we do that is so essential. Anyway, this is all a long way of saying, I think for me personally, like I found that I want to kind of value my silence a little bit more. At this time, I just kind of want to lay low a little bit and like keep my ear to the ground and listen to how people are responding, listen to the way, to the cracks, listen to the pain. Because I think when we come out of this, if and when we come out of this, right, like we're going to need art in general to respond in a new way. And you can't develop that new way by trying to insist on keeping things up as they were. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't answer your question. I don't know. I think I went...
No. You've answered my question much better than my question asked itself. Basically, it would be far too premature to respond in any way right now. And I absolutely agree with you. Short of wanting to be productive just so that a person doesn't fall into depression or, because you're worried about income, those are valid. But
no, there are just, I mean, like, my initial instinct was to be quite salty about the whole thing, but I've really just come to accept that everybody is dealing with this in their own ways. You just can't. You can't mandate a certain way to go about anything. Like I've seen so many like arguments, right? So like people were going around saying like, oh, let's stop trying to make digital content. Let's stop trying to like export our theatrical work into the digital space, because the digital space is fundamentally lacks that which makes theatre so unique and vital, which is human contact, right? Assembly, being in a space together. And that's what that's what the theatre is. And right now is not the time to try and reproduce that online because it's not possible. So I've heard that argument. But equally, I've heard the argument that actually this pandemic is the first of maybe hundreds. This is not the first time, this is not the last time we're going to be confined to our homes. If not for illness, then for various other things like war or any number of things. This is not the last time we're going to be confined to our homes this way. And if anything is to respond in any way, it needs to take stock of the fact that these spaces in which we congregate might not be available to us in the future. And actually saying that, theatre is a space where we assemble. Actually, it can come from quite a privileged space, can it not? Like, we're considering, now people are considering things like access. Who are the people who can't even get to the theatre or afford to go to the theatre? How do we, there is something quite democratic about the digital space. So, equally, you've heard all kinds of arguments, right? And both of them are very valid.
That's true. Yeah. Prior to COVID, you can remember what it was like.
When was that distant, murky past?
It's very hard to measure when it was, but it was. Where are you at in kind of reconciling what you were talking about, the fact that we like to think that theatre is this incredible social force, but it's also like something that is consumed by the bourgeois, like. Is it? Yeah. Are we really maybe not important? Is it just a rich people thing?
There are a lot of factors at work, right? It's not so much that the form is intrinsically bourgeois, because like it's not. you know, I mean, like it's in all its forms. Like theater can be an incredibly mainstream form. It can be, you know, it at the heart of it is an impulse to entertain, which I think is a very non-elitist kind of impulse. I think it's about the kinds of people who go to the theater and the way theaters are engaging with different kinds of communities, right? It's like, you know, and I think that's where a lot of theaters maybe haven't succeeded. Like in London, where I'm based now, though I'm not there at the moment. That's one of the big debates, right? Like how are we getting younger people? How are we getting people of color? How are we getting people from different socioeconomic groups into the theater? Because like if you've been to a theater in London, you know that by and large, those audiences are just like old bourgeois people.
A lot of white hair, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's probably because of like the old subscription systems, you know, where like these people were young, hip radical types when they were in their, you know, early day in their youth, and then the theaters were more affordable then, and they've kept, you know, they've kept up that culture. But then like what we know from, you know, like movements like, you know, what we know now is that my generation, for example, has come up with a lot less wealth. A lot less wealth available to us at this time, and so it's just like that. It's that intergenerational disjunct, right? And you see that in USA as well. The playwright Jeremy O. Harris gave a really great interview on, I think it was the Late Night Show with Stephen Colbert, where he talks about why it is that it's so hard to get, you know, different people into the theater, and like, so he's an interesting example because he wrote this play called Slave Play, right, which has gone on Broadway, and it engages with like you know, racialized politics in the USA and everything, but it's very hip, and it's brought in. It got tremendous mainstream appeal. Like Rihanna went to see it. You know, and like I think they found a way to give out tickets to Black people, young Black people specifically, and found different ways of producing, different models of producing that made sure that those audiences that were going to that space were more diverse. And I think like I just don't think everybody is thinking that way, because a big part of the theatrical machine seems to be like, let's just keep making to keep our margins in place. And so we're, you know, the last thing anybody's thinking about sometimes is like engagement. It's really just what's the next thing, and it's because the scene can be so precarious. And anyway, in the Singapore situation, I feel actually it's not that despairing. Like by and large, I think our audiences here are much younger. If anything, it's more young people than old people, right? So
it's probably not so much about age, but it would definitely be about class. Yeah,
class,
sure. Yeah. I mean, if you look at ticket prices now versus 20 years ago, yeah, it's a huge difference.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how. Like, I think to answer your original question, I don't know where I am in squaring that, because like I think about how would my mom come and see my plays, for example, right? And so like in the past couple of years, my writings moved towards a more experimental terrain. I used to write very kind of securely, kind of realist, naturalistic drama, and I'm kind of moving away from that. And even when I was writing that kind of like realist, naturalist drama, I would sometimes ask myself, would my mom come and see this? And I use that as a barometer of some sort, because my mom's not exactly like an arty-farty type. She's a very kind of like simple working class woman. And by and large, I don't know. Like I don't. She's seen a few of my plays and she's just gone like, yeah, you know, it's not really her thing. And I don't know what that says. But it's constantly a struggle, right? Like.
Here's a question for you though. Like, you're quite close to your mom. Is it fair to say that she wouldn't need to watch your plays because she would kind of already get that experience out of you?
No, we're not close in that way. You know, it's like it's the same kind of close. It's the closest that we have, you and me, for example. Like you would not need to see my plays in order to kind of. You know what I mean? My mom, on the other hand, knows a very different version.
Right. So what? Who is the Joel that surfaces in your plays that doesn't surface at home?
I don't know, you know, I think like my plays lately have begun to paint a very kind of unpleasant view of the world. Like I'm interested constantly in hypocrisy, and I'm exposing it and making people sit with it. You know, that's always kind of been my interest, right? In writing plays, making people sit with hypocrisy of other people and their own. It can go to some very dark places. Equally, it can go to some very quite spiritual and joyful places. So like extremes, right? Like emotional extremes. My parents don't see that aspect of me. They just, at home, I'm just very like, I keep to myself quite a bit, and I'm quite just like peacekeeping and quiet.
Right.
Yeah.
And you cook.
Yeah, and I cook. It's I guess also an aspect of like being queer, being like kind of thumbing down on certain aspects of my queer identity at home as well, because I see like these aspects of my writing as facets of my queer identity, which is always critical. It's always coming at an angle. It's always just trying to destabilize, right? But I kind of rein that in at home a little bit.
So back to what you were saying about sitting in discomfort, does this mean, do you think, that if you were to write Mosaic now, that it would be, because, I mean, I thought that was a brilliant play, but again, it was looking at hypocrisy. There was plenty of chance to laugh at it. I mean, I was laughing from beginning to end, right? I mean, it was uncomfortable, but there was plenty of release, and plenty of joy. And I have read some of your more recent work. It's true. I'm trying to remember whether there's any jokes. Don't have like.
No, don't have. Oh no! I've become such a drip. What was your question? Like, if I were to write it today?
Well, no, I guess I was just acknowledging the fact that you had always looked at hypocrisy previously. But it was done more with humor before, like Cafe as well, plenty of humor, like really over the top humor. So that's interesting that you kind of feel that it's a time perhaps for something more gruesome, for something more arresting and more assaulting, perhaps.
Maybe. I don't know what it is. I think a lot of it actually is the fact that I moved to London, right? And you know, like consciously or not, I've begun, I guess, to start considering how my work would be received there. And a lot of like my natural humor comes from like being in Singapore, right? And you know, the kind of humor that we have in Singapore it's very specific to this place. I greatly missed it. So like every time I meet Singaporeans in London, I feel like my funny bone grows back in a way. It's like,
right.
You know what I mean? It's not like I'm not funny with non-Singaporeans. It's just that they don't get that frequency of humor, and I have to kind of like go into a different place. And I think it's I find it actually find it. So a lot of the plays I'm writing now are not targeted specifically at a Singapore audience in the way that they used to be. So like I've got a broader kind of more international audience in mind when I'm writing. Right?
Yeah.
And it's just.
So maybe the humor will come in time. I remember when I first moved to Singapore, it took me many years to fully appreciate Singaporean humor.
Yeah. It's very hard to describe, right? Like the offbeat, very dry, actually very dry.
Yeah.
Stupid.
And also, I think often it's often in the language, it's often in the food, it's
in the references.
Policy.
Yeah.
Until you get acquainted to that and find a relationship with that, you're just not going to get the humor.
Yeah. So, It's not. So like another thing I've learned is that like my writing's become a lot more pared down as well. So you know, like I think when you're describing the humor in some of my earlier plays, like there was a very clear setup, right? I was setting up funny situations and I was setting up funny turns of phrase. I was setting up funny things, right?
Yeah.
I think I kind of backed away from that because now my style is a bit more minimal. It's like there's no room for that kind of setting up anymore. But so we were rehearsing a play of mine called No Particular Order, right? Which is a very sparse, very minimalistic kind of play. And in rehearsal, right, even with these small, because it's so stripped down, right, the actors bring a lot, inform a lot of the scene. Some of that was actually just very funny as well, without me necessarily thinking it would be. So I think humor is just, it's about different levels and kind of levers that you're pulling. There is something very funny about like the weird, the absurd as well, but that doesn't always set itself up to be funny. You know what I mean? Yeah.
What's inspiring you at the moment in terms of any other kind of art, like whether it be books or music or plays that you've seen, movies?
I've been listening to a lot of music, which is very, very nice. Classical music, a lot of like electronic music as well. A lot of contemporary stuff. Like, you know this, but like I came very late to the game musically because when I was younger, all I did was listen to church music because that was my background. And in a way, I didn't really have a relationship with secular music. And then it wasn't until about like, I only started listening to pop music maybe in my 20s. So I've got a lot of catching up to do. And I think like now that we're all stuck in the house, I find I'm enjoying listening to albums. You know what I mean? Like, I've never actually done that before, like listening to a whole album start to finish. It's like, what an experience, right? That's been quite nice because then I realized, oh, actually there's a reason why, even dramaturgically, right, why people arrange tracks the way they do. And why people talk about albums like they do novels, because they are, right?
Yeah.
So I've been very inspired by that. Listening to a lot of symphonies, as I always have.
Is there any performance that you've seen in London that has been notable for you?
I saw a really good production, which was on just before the pandemic hit, of Carol Churchill's Far Away.
Nice.
She's like one of my all-time favorite playwrights. And Far Away was the first Carol Churchill play I'd ever read. And like, I was so angry when I read it as a young playwright. I was just like, oh, this makes me so angry. Like, why do people write like this? What are they trying to prove, you know? And like, it took me a long time to come around to it. And now, in a weird way, my writing is kind of moving in that direction as well. And I just go, oh, I get it.
I see that. Yeah.
She's amazing. So I thought that was a really great performance. Like, I think it's so ballsy, don't you think, to just like bring people to the theater, and they're paying like whatever they're paying, and it shows like 40 minutes long, if that, you know what I mean? And just 3 short bits, and then people go home. It's like, I think that's so ballsy. Yeah, in a time as well where like there are these 7-hour epics that are still happening, right? Different ends of the scale.
No more of these things.
I think we should go back to like making these short 40-50 minute shows. You know what I mean?
These,
like, nobody has time to. Nobody has time.
Can price modestly, but I mean, my time is precious, right? My time is precious.
Yeah.
And
there's actually a very interesting thing that there's this playwright called Steve Waters, right, who wrote this book called The Secret Life of Plays, where he says that a good gauge for how long a play should be is how long you could personally sit in a theater without moving. And he says that the average seems to be like 90 minutes. Before you desperately need a break.
I see.
You know what I mean?
No, I think 90 minutes is a good cap.
I love 90 minutes.
It's nice.
Sometimes the play is bad. Even 10 minutes can feel like an audio. You know what I mean?
10 minutes is more than enough if it's bad.
Like, lights on. Nope, thanks. Let's go.
I come back later.
It's on already.
Do you remember when you first and how you first decided, oh, I'm a writer? like, did you, like, it must have been in university. Like, before university, you went to study literature, but I don't think you knew going in that you wanted to be a writer, did you? Or was that a possibility already?
Like I always been very creative, even as a kid, right? And even before all this writing thing happened, like I wanted so desperately to be a musician. Like you could not tell me otherwise. Like that was what I was gonna do.
Right.
I was like obsessively playing and practicing the piano. I was like composing. I was studying music history and music theory, and I wanted so desperately to be a classical music composer. This was like in secondary school, and like writing just kind of took a back seat a little bit in that time, right? And then like it wasn't until university that I took a creative writing. I took Huzair Sulaiman's playwriting course, and that kind of kicked me off on this journey. And I don't know when the decision or the realization came. It's more like it was procedural, right? I guess like it had a lot to do with the fact that when I was still in uni, Wild Rice produced my first play, Family Outing. So, professional debut means something, right? Like it felt like a start.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was more like after that, people started saying, hey, would you like to do this and do that? And then like I was still very involved with some university groups. We did a few shows. So it was procedural. I think after a while, I realized I graduated for a year and I hadn't gotten a job yet. I told myself after graduation, like, no, I'm going to give myself a year to see if I can make this work. And then like I just haven't looked back since. Like I've just been freelancing in any capacity since then, and I don't know. I think even now I still kind of wrestle with the fact that I'm a playwright. I write plays for a living, because I kind of don't. I do a lot of other things for a living. But I guess one important moment was like there was this show I did, I think in university, called City Night Songs, right, which was put up by Checkpoint Theatre when they were still the resident theatre company at NUS Centre for the Arts. And they put up a show every year where they got the students in the same show as professionals, and then they put up a Checkpoint show. So they put up this devised play called Checkpoint City Night Songs. And at the end of it, Huzair, who was directing it, came up to me and said, Joel, I think you're ready for the life, the life, as he put it. And I took that quite significantly, because it felt correct at the time, because we basically just done 8 weeks of back-to-back non-stop rehearsal. Even though I was still at school, this was like my whole life for 8 weeks, right? We were writing, rehearsing, acting, making music and everything. And then at the end of the 8-week process, we put up a show, and it's like, oh yeah, I actually feel like I'm working at a professional level, which I was.
Yeah, so generally what helps you keep growing as a writer, do you think? Or maybe it's not so much about what helps you keep growing as a writer. What keeps you writing?
Those are two different questions, actually.
Yeah.
So what keeps me growing is writing plays, Lord. You know what I mean? It's like each... No. I mean, it's not...
Or you grow about writing.
Yeah, it's not facetious, it's true. It's like every play you write, you learn something from it. And every play of yours you see performed, you learn a lot from it. And there's literally no other way. There's no other way to go about it. You can take all the courses you want, but it's this 2-step process of writing, 3-step process of writing, watching it, and then evaluating it. That is the only way to learn how to make work in general, and then writing plays as a subset of that, right? And every play I write, I try something new. So, like, I don't like to do the same thing twice, right? If I have, it's probably because I didn't try hard enough. So you try a different technique, or you try a different texture, or you try a different way in, a different way to start, and then you figure out what works and what doesn't, and then you kind of build a toolbox.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's like a toolbox of techniques and approaches that you can then just deploy. And then so on a craft level, people talk about craft a lot, but that's what it is, right? It's just like your own personalized set of tools and approaches that are unique and specific to you.
Mm.
And then I think another aspect of growth is voice, which is that one is really like has so much to do with who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And I think just growing as a writer is growing as a person. So like the person I am now writes differently from the person I was like 10 years ago, obviously. So there's that.
Talk a lot too about appreciating sitting in a rehearsal. That's something that's
Say that again. Oh yeah.
About appreciating sitting in on rehearsal. That's something that seems quite valuable to you.
Oh, it's very valuable to me. It's I love it. I love the rehearsal process. I love being challenged as a playwright because actually as a playwright, maybe now less so than I used to be. Like I could be quite sloppy. Like I would write in very broad strokes, and then they will always be questioned by the director and actors in a way that it helps refine the work. Right. Sometimes it doesn't, but when it does, it can be very, very exciting. And I think that's a part of me that also really enjoys the idea of directing, even though I've only done it a few times. Like which is why I like sitting in rehearsal because you can kind of see the thing come together. But I love sitting in rehearsal. I think like as a playwright, you also kind of need to know when your presence would be most helpful. And if you are there at a time when your presence is maybe not that helpful, how to keep your feelings to yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are times in the process where the director is really just jamming and trying new things out and drafting and just throwing stuff on the wall and seeing what sticks, right? And that can be very terrifying for a playwright who doesn't understand the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do some rapid fire questions. Favorite composer?
Gustav Mahler.
Favorite playwright?
Carol Churchill.
Favorite cocktail?
Manhattan.
Favorite cuisine?
Chinese.
Favorite fashion designer?
Comme des Garçons. Even though I can't afford it.
Sure, you can look. Do you have favorite authors, like novelists or poets? Favorite poet?
Favorite poet? T.S. Eliot, although that's very problematic. He inhabits he's like the center of a very elitist tradition in English poetry, but like some of his poetry is just so groundbreaking. Pooja Nancy, like she's a good friend, so this feels a bit like, Kaki. And Alvin Pang. And novelists. Novelist. Well, well, he's a novelist, but like I love his essays more than his novels. And I actually can't remember his name.
It's okay.
I'm drunk. What's his name? David. David Foster Wallace.
Okay.
David Foster Wallace. Okay, that's my favorite one.
Okay. So yeah, you've just reminded me of a question I wanted to ask you. Because you write essays and you can write rants. So how do you know when
just like extended Facebook posts?
Yeah. So how do you know when something is gonna become a play and when something is gonna just be a rant or be a post?
The impulses are different. Like the impulses for some of my plays can feel a bit like atheistic, I think. But like the impulse for writing a play is always emotional or kind of like it's harder to put a finger on. Whereas with an essay, it's kind of like an idea that I have a point to make. I have a concept that I'm trying to explore, and I guess it comes from like my academic writing background, so it's but then also equally a lot of my essays are very personal in nature. they are a way of exploring like a concept or an idea or phenomenon through my personal experience, a personal lens. Yeah, so they are quite different, and the plays are more. I guess I think about my plays like more musically, if that makes any sense. It's like writing music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you make sure that when you write a play, you kind of give your characters distinct voices? Like, what is the art of that?
That is very hard, you know. And I think actually, this is a very overrated point of craft. If you look at some of the great playwrights, right? Like, you just name a few, even Carol Churchill, Tony Kushner, for example. Like, a lot of their characters sound exactly the same. It's like, and if Shakespeare, for example, like weren't writing in different meters for different characters, I warrant like a bunch of them would sound the same as well. I mean, that's debatable, right? I actually think this idea that characters need to sound different, it's not a hard and fast rule, you know what I mean? And I know a lot of people put a lot of effort into like defining characters through class, through references and stuff like that, but I don't always know that. I don't always know that that's something that you need to obsess over. Right. I don't obsess over it. I think like if I hear it in my head, it goes on the page, right? And then later, you know, if something sounds weird coming out of their mouth, then you know it's off, right? Yeah, but I don't know that. I mean, there are different kind of techniques you could use, but I personally am not too concerned about it.
What excites you most about the art scene in Singapore?
The smallness of it, and I don't say this disparagingly. I think the intimacy of the scene is very comforting in a way that you know a lot of people, and just by working in it, you have access to all these brains. Sometimes the walls can feel quite low, and the barriers to entry can feel quite low, in as much as they sometimes do feel very, very strong. There is a sense that you can really get to know the people that you admire, whose work you admire.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the thing I miss most, obviously, is the intense engagement with this country, which is the specific birthright and responsibility of artists in this country. Nowhere else in the world is it incumbent on artists to write about Singapore, right? That is one of the most, like, actually beautiful things about this place, but equally, it can be very stultifying. Do you know what I mean? That, yes, but what else? So it's all these tensions and ambivalences about working here that I miss. You know? Yeah.
What kind of actor what do you want to see when you are entrusting your play in the body and the mouth of an actor? Aliveness.
Because nothing can feel more like horrifying to a playwright when you hear a line delivered as written. Does that make sense? Like as if it were written. Like the more written something sounds, the more painful to my ear. And an actor who can take a line and make it feel as if they invented it, because it's coming from a very specific truth and moment. That's a great skill.
Yeah, someone that can find impulses and find honesty,
and equally someone who has a kind of sensitivity to language. You know, the inherent rhythm of a line. That's as well. And then everything else on top of that, right? Like physicality, voice. Yeah. But I think first and foremost, that kind of like textual intelligence is the most sexy thing for me.
Favorite play?
Favorite play? Pentecost by David Edgar. I don't know that. It's a really like fantastic play. Yeah. It's I don't even know how to describe what I mean. It's about a lot of things, but it's a great play. Still building. Yeah. Truly, like, Still Building is one of my favorite plays ever. When I first read it, I was just like so floored by the structure, and yeah, every time I teach playwriting, I make people read it because it's just like one of those plays where the form does so much work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a great play.
So, can you give us a hint of what you're writing about now? Give us a peek.
A hint.
We'll wrap up.
A smattering. You know this. I'm writing a play called Sand, which is about colonial legacies in the world, right? Told through the lens of the practice of land reclamation. So I was very taken when I moved to the UK that there is very little knowledge of and understanding of British imperial power and the history of that whole thing, right? It's something that they kind of like broadly censor from their curriculum, and that because of this collective amnesia about empire, they can be quite nostalgic about.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like it really puzzles me. So I was like, I'm very curious. So like, this is a play that I'm writing on commission for theatre in London, right? And it may or may not get used, but like, I'm very keen on bringing these conversations to British audiences, because it's like empire was not that long ago and it's far from over. We still live with it today.
Yeah.
In very difficult ways. Anyway, so like I was curious when so this is a bit. I've always been very fascinated by the current practice in Singapore about land reclamation, right? And how like we basically increased our land mass by 20% over so many years. And then like it's come to light recently that a lot of the sand that we get to do this reclamation is coming from very dodgy places, and that it's actually causing direct environmental damage to parts of Southeast Asia, like Cambodia right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's so fascinating, this dynamic, right? That Singapore, one of the most neoliberal, probably neo-colonial powers in Southeast Asia, exercises is essentially a land grab. You know what I mean? It's in the same spirit as British imperialism, like conducted in completely different machinery, but it's the same spirit.
Yeah.
Because when the British came to Singapore, the first thing they did was like reclaim what is now, I suppose, Boat Quay and Chinatown. Like there used to be this not massive, a small hill, right? And they leveled that hill so they could get enough sand to fill the swamp. And I just thought, like, that's so messed up.
Yeah.
And
very,
and ingenious at the same time, and just so like it still sits with me. There's so much there, and sand. Sorry, I'm just talking too much about my own play now, but like that's where I'm at. Okay.
Okay. Well, it's been lovely chatting with you today, Jotan.
Thanks, Sean.
Get some insight into your brain, and yes, giving us some nice headshots there, some nice looks.
My best angle.
Yeah. And perhaps we'll do this again sometime. I finished my drink. Did you finish your drink?
Me too. I drained it.
So we're going to officially wrap up this chat now. Thank you so much, Joel.
Bye, Sean. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.